11 kilometers per second is known as the escape velocity. It is the amount of force or speed that one must travel in order to escape the Earth's gravity. And so the reason I use that term is because in order to soar, to become a star, to reach out into the heavens, you have to escape the forces that bear you down. The biggest of which is fear of judgment of others, and then our addiction to comfort. In this YouTube channel, what I do is I discuss the things that must be done for us to reach our potential. Hello again, everyone, my beautiful people. My name is Mac and Zardina, and welcome to another episode of 11 kilometers per second. And so today what I want to talk about is one of the tools that we have been given for the sake of survival, but that tends to hold us down, and that keeps us from accomplishing what we want, and that is avoidance of pain. And so two of the biggest ones, fear is one of the biggest ones that we have. Not just fear. Fear is a tool that we use, obviously, not to run around and, not take precautions and run into, dangerous animals, dangerous things. But it's also something as social beings that is a tool that we use to have people conform. It is a tool that, combined with our need for attachment, need to be be with other people, there is also this fear that people can go off on their own, or it can become even tyrannical, whatever the case may be. But that does happen when people can overcome that fear of judgment of others. I've talked about it in other videos, but just quickly, when we're talking about respect, when we're talking about people going on suicide missions, kamikaze, all of that, that is all about what we think about what others think. The idea of people committing suicide, if you're not terminally ill, that is just about what people think of you. Fear of judgment of others is a huge thing for human beings, and so it is one of the things that hold us back. And when you have the desire to focus enough on that desire, when it overcomes that fear of judgment, that is when you're going to be able to escape that which holds you down. But that is just one of the forces. The big one is pain. Pain is also another tool, right? Physically, if you're feeling pain, it usually is because there's some damage caused to your physical form. But we also have mental pain. Is anything that basically causes us to use energy. We have limited amounts of energy at any given time. Like, you're going to expand energy, and everything that we do expends that energy. Our brains, for example, uses about 20% of our energy. That's just from having to make decisions. But everything that you do, like your body, we are programmed so that you can go on autopilot. This is why you can drive home and not even think about the different things that you are doing. This is how, when you become an expert at something, you don't have to think about what it is that you're doing. It's a habit. It's automatic, and our brains and our bodies are made to get us to the point where everything is automatic, so that we're not expending a lot of energy trying to decide what to do. If you can imagine, like, what would happen if you took in and had to take in all the stimuli that you see, every piece, like you're walking out the door, you see the trees and all this other stuff. This is why they say mindfulness gets you to start to see all of those things. You have to consciously force yourself to see all of those things, or get into the practice of seeing all of those things, because we're programmed to block all of that stuff out, to filter it out, so that we are spending energy on what's important. And so this is how we are programmed, so that we're surviving. But that also causes us to feel some pain when we're expending that energy. So it's a way for us not to expend that energy. And a lot of people can't really understand that, like mental pain, not physical pain, but mental pain. A lot of people probably, if you really think about it, it'll probably be a stretch for you to see, but I'll try to see if I can connect the dots, right? All right, so when you are born, and this is the thing, so work causes us pain, which is why we don't like pain. Work. So now I got to go back and describe what work is. Work, I've tried to describe this in other videos as well. Work is anything that is new, which we can be judged for our performance. Before, I used to call work anything that we don't want to do that gets us closer to something that we want. And that's still true. However, the question is, why is it that we don't want to do it? And there's a lot of things that can be considered work because it's all about some kind of action, right? There's a lot of things that people do that they're not considering work, like going out. People who go out every day and play basketball, they don't consider that work. You bring that to somebody else who may not want to do that, that same activity becomes practice, it becomes work. From the moment you're born, for example, you're at work. You're working on two things. You're working on trying to get fed. So if you're hungry, you're crying. That takes energy. If you're, if you're hungry or whatever, if when it's time to eat, for example, you have to use your mouth. You have to, use your mouth to suck on your mother's breast or the baby bottle, whatever case. That is work. As a baby who has very little, muscle movement and all this other stuff, whatever it is that you're working on to try to get the food, you're actually doing the work. So from the moment we're born, we're working, but we're not considering that work. I mean, obviously as a baby, you can't tell that, but in any case, after that, you got to learn to walk. You got to learn to talk. All of those things are getting you closer to things that you want, walking to the object that you want, or talking so that you can, more effectively, more sophisticatedly get the things that you want. All right, all of those things work. And so depending on the culture, depending on what you're naturally inclined towards or your natural talents are, depending on your experiences, there are certain things that you will consider work and other things that you won't consider work, right? So some people who are in cultures where they're being taught to read right away, to do all those sorts of things like that, they may learn to love it real quickly, especially, or math, if they're inclined to math, or, they went someplace where, their parents worked on cars and all that other stuff. All that stuff might be something that they fall in love with, and they're not considered that work. Every time, something comes up that, is about cars or the YouTube videos, whatever, they're always in it and they don't consider that work. Somebody else who is not interested is going to consider that work. All right. So that's the same thing. Like there are people, for example, who are like 16, 17-year-olds. This is when, you're either like, depending on your culture again, you could be in the streets spending countless amount of time and hours. The fact that you're like hanging out with your friends, or if you're a drug kingpin, you're one of these people who are putting in a lot of work. Like there's a strategy. There is, you have to talk to people, you have to manage people, there's a lot of things that is involved in that. You have to watch your back, you have to basically manufacture the product, you have to distribute. There's a lot of work involved in that. Or you could be somebody who started learning math and science from the beginning, and then now they're working at school all day long. Work. So all of that is work, and the issue is not that people aren't working. Some people are UPS doing all those bottles, and some bottles are moving all these packages and whatever. And then there are some people who are on the desks using their brain energy. All of that is energy. And the thing is, when you have to expend that energy, and you don't know, it hasn't become a habit yet. You haven't learned it, because learning is anything that you haven't, learning is something that's unfamiliar to you, right? Whether it's book learning or experiential learning, something that's unfamiliar to you. If you already know it, obviously you now have to learn it. And so learning it requires energy, all right? And then There are a lot of different things that you might spend energy on. So, for example, if you're going out to do something new and exhilarating, you don't necessarily have to, quote, learn it. But even if you do have to learn it, and there isn't necessarily anything associated with performance, right? Somebody's not saying you have to, in order for you to do this, you have to do it, you have to learn it enough so that you can perform it well, so that you could do well at it, so that you actually know this stuff. It's not like just studying in it, reading it, for example. Oh, this is interesting. Look, I've just read about some current event, some rapper did something. But if it's, you have to learn what that rapper's, birthday is, and you have to go and you have to tell people, you have to do a whole report in it. Now that's probably going to require some energy, especially if you're not interested in that person at all. Same thing with experiential stuff. Like if you have to go out and do something that you haven't done, you have to learn to play basketball, you have to learn to play soccer, whatever, and your performance is what's going to be judged by others. Did you do well? Are you good or whatever? And you have to keep on doing it until you actually do that well. So that's when it becomes work. That's when it's like, now it's not fun. It requires my energy to do, and there's even an added element of energy associated with the fact that I'm now going to be thinking about whether I'm judged by others, the anxiety over that. This is why people have social anxieties. This is why, every year when they do this study, public speaking remains one of the biggest fears that people have. There's energy associated with the fear and the anxiety that's around that as well. So even bigger amounts of work. So that's why I wanted to briefly touch upon why, that is, expending energy is pain. Expending energy is physical pain. There are other kinds of physical pain, but ultimately the energy that you have to spend around something that you don't know, primarily because you're being judged on it, can cause you pain, social anxiety, pain, mental pain. And if there is enough pain, because we are kind of like a computer, right? We have our bodies, which is like the hardware. We also have our minds and our mental state, which is like the software. So, our programming, the way that we're designed, is to essentially keep us from having a lot of damage either to our hardware or to our software. And so whenever it is that we sense that there is a measure of pain coming in, then our first instinct, our biological instinct, is to avoid it. Why is that important? Well, that's important because in order to grow, you have to learn. In order to learn, you have to expend energy. That means you have to get through the pain. You have to in order for you to grow, essentially, you want to escape the forces that hold you down, you're going to have to go through the pain. You have to see it as a necessary benefit. So whenever you're feeling that twinge of pain of, oh shoot, I don't want to work, or oh shoot, I'm feeling some fear, instead of looking at that as a bad thing, first and foremost, it is a good thing to know what you're dealing with, right? If you can identify the problem, okay, now I know what it is, and I don't have to be worried about also trying to figure out what the issue is. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why am I in pain? Natural, this is what it is. Now that you know what it is, the response is, now I've got to push past it. Okay, that's a trigger for you. Oh, I'm feeling this. Now I got to push past it. Okay, so, but the thing is, like I said, we're programmed to avoid pain. Just as you can cause enough bodily harm to cause you to stop functioning, to die, you can also get enough, mental harm to get you to either malfunction, people going insane, or to stop functioning too. There are countless stories about people who have, died off of what they were thinking, like psychosomatic, illnesses is the idea that your mind can make you sick. There's this story You guys can look this up because I'm going to try to recount it as best as I remember. But there is this guy who got locked up in a freezer truck. One of those freezer trucks that transport like perishable goods, meats and stuff from, state to state or whatever. He got locked inside a freezer truck. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna freeze to death. I'm gonna die. It's over. So I think he either was like texting or like he recorded somehow what was going on in his mind. He's like, oh my God, I don't have much time. I'm gonna die. All right, long story short, they later find him. They found, how he was, documenting the whole process, and they realized that this truck that he was stuck inside of was like had malfunctioned a long time ago. The thing couldn't freeze. It was never frozen. The temperature was like regular. But in the guy's mind, because he believed that the freezer truck was frozen, he basically caused himself to die because he was thinking he was going to die. So that is an example of how, your mind can cause you to die. And so therefore, like, your body is intently trying to prevent you from facing the kind of pain that could cause you to die. So this is what happens though when we do not, like, we do not overcome, we don't understand this and we do not overcome it, right? We don't, like, you cannot achieve and become your unique self, right? First of all, you're afraid that people are going to judge you, so you're not going to try to do that. You're afraid then of the energy that's involved, and so you don't perform at your best level, right? So a lot of people don't realize this, but the Kobe Bryants and the Michael Jordans of the world, the reason they got that way is, and people have talked about this all the time, like, there is a habit to become a winner. And I didn't really understand that until recently, when I realized that for a long time it was like, sometimes I'd give disclaimers about, I don't think it's, that this is, like, if you don't want to put all your effort in, it's because you're afraid of what is going to happen if you do lose, right? You give these disclaimers, oh, I'm not that good or whatever, or self-pity, for example. All of those things are trying to say, okay, well, don't expect me to win. And all you're doing is like trying to buffer, or you're trying to create some kind of cushion for your fall, for your potential failure, right? And so people keep doing that. And so as a result of not wanting to put so much in and being devastated by the loss, a lot of people don't go all out. The Kobe's, the Jordans, they go all out every single time, right? And it's not like they are different than us in that they don't get devastated. The difference, and this is huge, is that instead of focusing on what they don't want, the devastation of the loss, they're focusing on what they do when I want to win. So whenever it is, and they have lost many times, they've, you can look up whatever documentary. There's been a lot of losses, but and likely if you're a competitive person like them, it's devastating. But the next time that they have an opportunity to again, most people will be like, well, I'm not gonna experience that feeling anymore, so I'm not gonna put any more in it. But they, on the other hand, they go back and put just as much in every single time. And what happens is, because the other people who are their competition, do not, inevitably they win. Now that becomes a habit. They now start to be like, all right, if I put enough in, I'm gonna win. And they see enough wins that this is something that they habitually do. And whether it's like an opponent that you're going against that doesn't put in as much, or it's no opponent, it's like whatever it is that you have to do, if you're constantly putting in as much as possible, you're going to see wins, even if you see some losses. But most of us will focus on the avoidance of the pain. We focus on the avoidance of how painful it was to have suffered that defeat, as opposed to here's what I actually want. I want to win, and accepting that losses are part of life, accepting that, you know, losses are part of being winners, like, and instead of trying to avoid it, going through it and accepting that pain, because that's how you grow, that's how you become better, that's how you develop and become a winner. So this is it, man. If you want to become a winner, you got to understand that there is a programming in us that causes us to want to avoid pain, but that's precisely what you want to not do, is not to avoid the pain, go through it. Okay, well, there's, that's what I want to talk about today. There is understanding the work that's involved, because ultimately, whatever it is that you have a sparking motivation, and, what I do is try to help people get that kind of motivation, make them build their desire to a certain level. But then I also work on the part where you will overcome those twin forces that will put you down, that fear of judgment, and the avoidance of pain. Those are the things that will quickly, as you start to jump in the air trying to escape gravity, because you are you're excited about something, you have something that you want to do. As you jump to the air, you don't keep going, you don't defy gravity, because you're not moving fast enough to overcome those two twin forces. In any case, this is Mac Audina, 11 kilometers per second. I am working on a coaching program that I am putting out, if I haven't put out already. So hopefully you'll have that, and if you don't, check it out when it comes out. Thanks, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.